Al-Assal, I have a couple of questions of my own. Let me start with an assumption that if this law is passed, we will see more super visa applications. I mean, I'm making that assumption. It may not be true. So let's start with that. Can we make a fair assumption that the number of applicants will go up and therefore the number of temporary visa holders in this stream will also go up in Canada?
Yes, we can make a fair assumption on two fronts. Number one, Canada is welcoming more immigrants. So just by that alone, we're going to see more super visa applications moving forward. And then secondly, I submit to you that these reforms make the super visa far more appealing. And so as a result, we should, in theory, see more Canadians access this program.
You proposed an interesting idea around allowing these temporary residents who are parents and grandparents to fill labor market needs. It's an intriguing idea, but it goes against one of the main arguments for the bill, which is parents and grandparents come to help the children, to support the family, to look after the home. And I know there's no purity in all of this, but I was just wondering, is there not some slight contradiction here?
Not at all, Senator. I think we can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, right? We're not saying we expect these parents and grandparents to work 40 hours a week and to shoulder economic load for Canada's future. What we're saying is let's give them the option, if they so choose, to work, while at the same time, if it's required, the family can decide, yeah, we need their assistance on the childcare front, right? One thing I want to point out, Senator, and this is a topic I studied, I looked at 2016 census, immigrant incomes by family size. As a general rule, the larger the family, higher the income is, and the income levels are comparable to the household income sizes of Canadian families, right? So like one of the limitations we make when we assess the outcomes of immigrants is we look at them as individuals rather than as part of family units, right? And so like, even if you're adding an additional income and let's say that person is only making minimum wage, still goes a long way because at the end of the day, it helps to equalize the household income of immigrants with their Canadian-born counterparts.
Thank you. Let me probe a little further. You talked about an Australian program with 10 different streams. So a question, since we do have time, are you able to quickly orient us to these 10 streams, or can you send us some information about the various routes so that we can refer to them in our study report?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be happy to share the link to the Australian government's website with the clerk. What I'll point out is, interestingly, Australian government looks to accommodate families looking to reunite, both on the low and the high end of the income spectrums, right? So like they have visa options for higher net worth individuals, right? For parents and grandparents. If they demonstrate that they have high levels of income, they can pay a higher fee to be able to reunite with their children and grandchildren in Australia. And conversely, for people on the lower end of the income spectrum, they do a needs-based assessment. You know, they do have humanitarian elements within their visa regime. And so, for instance, if a parent or grandparents, last remaining family are in Australia, the Australian government will look to accommodate them as well. Right? I think we have to remember at the end of the day, Canada's immigration system has three main objectives: strengthen the economy, reunite families, and to help refugees, right? And so when we're looking at the parents and grandparents program, we really have to focus on the family and the societal benefits of bringing parents and grandparents over to Canada. Of course, we don't want to we want to mitigate potential economic challenges, but at the end of the day, we need to allow the familial considerations to carry the day.
Thank you. Senator Cardozo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. El-Assal. It's nice to see you again. I think the last time you and I met was back in the pre-pandemic days, and you and I were in different roles. But I'm really pleased to see you've continued to research this this topic in great detail. So congratulations for that. My question will be about the bubblegum part of your proposal. Regarding parents and grandparents working, can this be handled by regulation or by a ministerial order as opposed to making any changes to this bill? Because I think that's one of the things you want to keep in mind is not making any changes to this bill as we address it.
Yes, absolutely. The minister can introduce a policy reform with the stroke of a pen, enabling parents and grandparents to access work permits in Canada.
Mr. El-Assal, we've talked a little bit about risk here today in this session. Perhaps from your point of view and where you're sitting and what you know, I wonder if you could address the issue of risk and to whom the risk is in all of this.
Of course, there are risks. So I think we have touched on many of them. I mean, I don't want to focus on the negatives, but to have a balanced conversation, you do have to focus on, you do have to explore the upside and downside risks. So on the downside, introducing foreign entrants, even if it's highly regulated by the government, by the Canadian government, does pose risk. We see this in the international student sector, where even though IRCC outlines on its website the over 1,500 designated learning institutions that make international students eligible for post-graduation work permits, we still have unscrupulous actors overseas that are able to convince international students to go to a particular Canadian higher educational institution that is in fact not a designated language learning institution, right? And so as a result, these students lose a lot of money, and at the end of the day, they don't get the coveted post-graduation work permit, which they're looking for in order to pursue permanent residence. And so the concern here is that unscrupulous foreign actors may convince parents and grandparents, or even the Canadians, that a particular health insurance provider makes them eligible for the super visa. They pay the premium, and then unfortunately their application gets denied when they submit it to IRCC, and they've lost a lot of money, right? So we have to be very careful about this, which is why I'm an advocate of a vigorous public relations campaign by IRCC to help inform the public that it's only these providers that the minister has reviewed and designated that can offer medical insurance for the purpose of the super visa.
Thank you, Kurt.
That's just one of the risks.
We have time, Mr. El-Assal. You can carry on or choose to stop there.
Well, I mean, we've discussed them already. I do think that the department can help us. They do have this data. I don't think they're hiding it. I think we just need to encourage them to share it. How many of the 144,000 or so individuals who have obtained a super visa since it was introduced in 2011 have in fact decided to make an H&C claim to remain here as permanent residents? Right, that's something we need to evaluate to ensure that moving forward, as the super visa admissions grow as expected, there aren't the unintended consequence of people deciding to access the H&C as a means of remaining here permanently. We don't want to have loopholes in place, right? So this is something that we need to evaluate. At the end of the day, program integrity is in all of our benefit, right? Including for the Canadians looking to bring their parents and grandparents over, right? So we just want to make sure that we don't have these sorts of challenges moving forward.